All right, well, we're at day 120, which is really exciting. So thank you all for being here. Not knowing entirely who the audience was going to be, the next slide will just walk very, very quickly through mission basics in case you're new, and if you are, welcome. You can pretty much tell from the very clever acronym that we are an Earth Science mission, with plankton and ocean ecosystem obviously representing our sea, aerosol and cloud representing our sky. Unfortunately, there's no L for land, but we're hoping to be very useful for that community as well. Polar ascending, it's a sun synchronous orbit, so this is very similar to most Earth Science missions, particularly the ones NASA flies. So 1 o'clock local equatorial crossing time. So wave hello. Well, if you're on the US East Coast, it's flying over now. Roughly 700 kilometers altitude. And maybe more important than anything for you all, there's a data latency that runs somewhere between 3 or 24 hours. And so you should have at least level 2 science data products at your fingertips, within a couple of hours of collection. And these data, as you'll learn later in this webinar, are all free and available for public use. So Morgan, if you hit twice, you'll see the instrument payload. Briefly, 3-instrument payload. The primary instrument is not so cleverly called the ocean color instrument. I say that because it is hyper capable for aerosol retrievals as well, and somewhat capable for clouds. It's a hyperspectral scanning radiometer that runs from the ultraviolet all the way into the near infrared, plus a few shortwave infrared bands. 2-day global coverage. It's 1 kilometer at nadir. 1.1 is really what you'll see because we have a 20-degree fore after tilt. Most of the science requirements for the mission were based on oceans related to the ocean color instrument. And then we have 2 brilliant and beautiful small and mighty contributed polarimeters. The first is from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. It is a multispectral polarimeter with a very wide swath and hyperangular capabilities. The second is a contribution from an organization in the Netherlands. It is Specs 1. It is hyperspectral from roughly 385, so a little bit of UV all the way into the near infrared with a narrow swath and 5 viewing angles. And so I'm oversimplifying by saying 1 is great for clouds and 1 is great for aerosols. The reality is they both offer capabilities above and beyond what OCI can do alone. So we're really, really pleased to have them as part of the PACE Observatory. Getting to what you probably care about more, data are on the street in the next slide. They were released on day 63. So we are just shy of 2 months of having, hopefully in your hands, data products to be kicking the tires with. What we released initially in this batch was level 1, which is radiometry from all 3 instruments, plus a limited series of heritage ocean color products from OCI. Sequencing to the next part of this, we are planning our first mission, full mission reprocessing in the next couple of weeks. Timing to TBD, but we're expecting in the 2 to 3 week time frame. That text should appear in a second, I hope. The idea here is to use what we've learned on orbit in terms of calibration and apply that to all 3 instruments. So it'll be the first time we move away from strictly only using pre-launch information and starting the migration onto what we have collected on orbit. What's also important here, perhaps, is that any data that were collected as science operations within our commissioning period, dating all the way back into February, those data will also be made available. And that's what I mean here by saying data collected during commissioning. We're hoping to release a small batch of secondary waves of data products along with this to include terrestrial vegetation indices and surface reflectances for both land, inland waters and offshore waters. So transitioning to the last part of this slide, just so everybody is aware that additional data products will, of course, be released with time. The promise of PACE is so much more than what we're putting out on the street now, and the timing for this will all be pending review by the project and the PIs for each of these algorithms. All right, so next slide. With that in mind, if you are interested in following along with the status of what we've implemented and what we're currently implementing, this is a website with a comprehensive table On the primary PACE page, if you go to the pull down menu in data, you should find a link to this, and you'll notice that there's one column that has stoplight colored coding, and that is intended to share with you what data is currently available, what data is soon to become available or in the process of being implemented, and that would be the green, yellow, or the yellow. And then there's the red, meaning that we don't have an approach identified for production of that data product. So this would be your resource for understanding when is the data I'm interested in coming down the pipe. And you'll notice some hyperlinks on the side too that points to algorithm theoretical basis documents, PIs in the community who are contributing these algorithms, and then other kinds of documentation that might be of use depending on your interest. If you go to next, I would just want to point out that we're trying to be as open and democratic about this as possible. There is a very rigorous plan for implementation of new data products. It's not limited just to our science community. I'm sorry, our science and applications team community. Anybody with a viable approach is welcome to reach out, follow that QR code to understand next steps. There is a back and forth process where we do have to do a number of evaluations, and it takes a little bit of time, and that timing depends on what resources we have available. But at the same time, I think it's important for everybody to realize that it's not a closed system here. So, okay, next slide, please. Just spinning through some early data analysis. What you're seeing here is a side-by-side comparison of remote sensing reflectances at a blue band for OCI on the right and NOR20 VIIRS on the left. Since we are in the process of collecting field data but have not rigorously used it for analyses yet, we're spending some time looking at maps such as this to ask ourselves the question, hey, is what we're seeing from OCI representative of what we're seeing from our heritage missions? And the good news is it looks really, really great. So transitioning to the next, there should be a small plot of remote sensing reflectances. And we're very, very pleased to report that right out of the box, with no calibrations applied, the retrievals from OCI are indeed mimicking what we're seeing from the heritage VIIRS missions. So this is really, really great news because we're only going to get better from here. Next slide. Showing some advanced data products. These panels were part of our first light release. They're courtesy of Lorraine Raymer's team, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and they represent a number of very innovative, unique, and new aerosol property retrievals from the ocean color instruments. Just underscoring again, that name is a little awkward, but we're really excited to see where this goes. Next, moving on to polarimetry. There's been a bunch of work done, of course, by the HARP2 team. Greatly admire and internally, and showing here global maps of aerosol optical depth and fine mode fraction from HARP2. So there's been some great preliminary effort on retrievals of aerosol products from this polarimeter, with clouds, of course, to come and a lot of other innovation. Next slide. Pivoting to Specs 1. These are preliminary aerosol products that also were part of our first light release, and we're really excited to see contributions from coarse mode and fine mode to total aerosol optical depth and absorption coming out of that instrument. So I think what we're alluding to here is that this is truly a mission of discovery. And pausing there just for a really quick second, I'd like to simply say that we very much want to be hearing from you. We realize communication hasn't been perfect. Some of that is because of failure of our email distribution systems. Some of it is entirely on me and us, because busyness and all of that. But what you're seeing is really important, and it really does further our ability to move NASA Earth science and continuity missions and everything forward. So the good, the bad, and ugly, please don't be shy. Our doors are open, and anything you're discovering, we're very, very much interested in. So, okay, so getting towards wrapping this up, what's happening in our community? Well, our science and application number 2 team is winding or has wound down. SAT3 selections are underway, so we'll have a new science and application team coming soon. I will note there's also a late year Roses appendix called the Science of PACE that will will have information about how to respond in the coming month or so. Going to the next, and you can keep going through these, Morgan, so I can wrap it up. We do have a validation science team. This was competed last year. They are actively out in the field with the first groups at sea. So we expect data in the next month or so from them. We are still planning for PACE PAX, which is an airborne experiment that will be conducted off the US West Coast in September. That is going to be our really best opportunity for the foreseeable future to collect airborne measurements to support PACE performance assessments. Then at the moment, there are still 2 system vicarious calibration teams with HyperNav deployed and Mariner coming pretty soon. Then if you're a part of this call, you also know that we have an early adopters program and a community of practice. We're spinning around 30 teams at this point. And then what I think is last for my update, so we can get to questions, is just a nod to what you'll be hearing about next, that there are a lot of really, really new and interesting ways that we are hoping to be sharing data with the world. There has been an evolution in how this is done. You'll learn about that. But there are also tutorials and notebooks and things that are being developed. And I wanted to highlight that even though applications are closed and organization is ongoing, there is a social coding event, the PACE Hackathon, that will be held at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in early August. And anything developed through that will, of course, be available to the public and the user community. So check back on that as well. Okay, I think I am done. Probably went 14 minutes or so. So I am around for the next half hour, and I'd love to chat with all of you through questions, and I will be monitoring. So thanks, Morgan. Back to you.